Welcome to Tech Notice, my friends. So I'm not sure if you know this, but you can buy Mac Pro wheels. So your Mac Pro, you can buy wheels for it for £400 or $400. You can check it on Apple's site if you don't believe me, but I thought, what if we spent that money on a PC, built a PC for the price of Mac wheels, you know, to get a little bit more usage out of that £400 than just some wheels. So this is the PC that I built. This cost £414 and I wasn't even looking for deals. Everything on Amazon, just look on the basket, check out, and there we go. Now I'm sure you can find some parts cheaper and things like that. But the big question is, why would you build a PC where we know that there's some awesome new product launches coming in a few months? Why would you build the PC, you know, what this PC can do? Why would you build this for this price? And why did I use exactly those parts? Well, that's exactly why you're here. Nah. Maybe. Okay. Tech boy 1, 2, 3. Nah, what was it? What was it?
Hi there. I've heard you've got problems with remembering your password.
How did you know? Wait a second. Who are you and what are you doing here?
I'm Dashlane and I'm sponsoring this video.
Wait, you can do that?
Oh, I can do much more than that. Do you feel like this? And you want to feel like this?
Stop telling me how I feel.
Dashlane, me, makes it easy to remember everything. I autofill your personal info like addresses, credit cards, password, you name it, I remember it. It makes online checkout a breeze.
Whoa. Wait a second. You remember my passwords? That doesn't feel safe.
I can generate super strong passwords and replace your techboy123 that you use on almost every single site. Plus, all the passwords that you do store with me are encrypted, making a password manager the safest place to store your info.
Aha, see, that's the thing. I can't remember my username.
I can, and I do. And I can fill out all the fields for you when checking out online.
But I use multiple devices, and it's not like you can do that.
You don't need to worry about that. I work on multiple devices, and the first device is for free. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I also include a full VPN service.
So, where do I find more information about it?
All you have to do is go to dashlane.com/technotice to get Dashlane for free on your first device. Then, if you want to go premium, use the code TechNotice for 25% off.
Hey, wait a second. You've already set that up. Who are you?
I'm Dashlane.
So how this video is gonna go is that at first I'm gonna talk you through some of the parts that I was using when building this PC and why and what's the thinking behind it. And then we're gonna look at inside the PC over here and then actually look at how does it perform in some everyday tasks and things like that. So at the moment I'm actually running Cinebench test over here. So while we're gonna get to that, it's probably gonna be done and we can see the scores. Every single component for this PC had like the back thought or why I thought this is good is that you don't want to waste any money. So every part that I've put in there has a massive future potential. For example, instead of using 2 RAM slots over there, so that's why we went with only 1 stick of RAM. We want 16 gigabytes. So now if we put another 3 slots of this exact same RAM in there, we're gonna get 64 gigabytes. So there's a massive future proofness. By the way, if you want to check out these parts, I'm gonna leave everything I'm talking about in the description as well. And if I forget anything, just, you know, remind me in the comment section below. This stick of RAM is in the description. So this is a crucial 2666 megahertz RAM. Now I know this is not the fastest, but come on, we're on a 400 budget here. We have to do this. Instead, I went with 16 gigabytes because I thought that's more important than the fast RAM in our case, where we want to do it everyday usage. In my case, when using it more like a workstation usage, so you want to use a little bit of photo editing, you know, rendering, doing some tasks, then more RAM I think is more important. Now, like I said, you can slot in another 3 slots in there, which is amazing. Now, the only thing is that this RAM stick, unfortunately, is green. So that's the worst thing about this computer, if you know what I mean. A green RAM stick, but you know, we're on a 400 budget, so let's not worry. By the way, if you do wanna, you know, squeeze a little bit more extra out from your budget, I'm gonna leave some sticks in there with faster RAM that you can put in there and, you know, get the aesthetics right as well. So the main brain in there is a Ryzen 5 3400G processor, a 4-core and 8-thread processor. It also has a graphics card built into the processor. So it is an APU instead of a CPU. Why I went with this one is that this is AMD's biggest or best APU processor, or APU, which means this shares the AM4 socket. Now, AM4 socket supports 2nd gen Ryzen, 3rd gen Ryzen, and now 4th gen Ryzen that's upcoming processors are all good for this socket, as well as this motherboard, the B450 motherboard. We're gonna get to that in a moment as well. But this processor kinda is like I'm gonna step in until the big boys kinda arrive, if you know what I mean. And because it has the graphics card and CPU built in, we're not wasting any money on the graphics card. Now, I could have gone with a faster CPU like the Ryzen 3600 and then got like a really cheap GPU. But the thing is, if you want to upgrade your graphics card or processor, which probably be one of the first things you want to upgrade on your PC, you're wasting all of that money that you've just put in there because you just need a new GPU. You know, whatever GPU you put in there, that money is wasted. So at this point, there is no GPU in there. You can just straight away put a GPU in there, even like an RTX 2060 or 3060, the upcoming ones. You're not wasting any money of the old graphics card that you have to throw away or try to sell. Now, this processor cost me £130. Even if you have to sell it like, you know, second hand, you're probably still gonna get 100 for it. So you're not wasting that much money when going with this processor, even when upgrading to a higher processors, you know, even 3950X if you wanted to. So for that reason, I went with this processor. And do you know what? This processor isn't that bad doing everyday tasks. It is quite, you know, good what it does, and quite cheap for the price as well. We're gonna look at some benchmarks and things in a moment. So the motherboard that holds this whole thing together is an Aorus B450 Elite. Okay, so it's an ATX size motherboard. It is actually an overkill for this build. Now, if you wanna get the best bang for that price, you probably go with a cheaper motherboard to get a bit more, you know, for a bit better processor or a bit better graphics cards to get a bit more performance there. The reason I went with this one is that we know from the rumors that this motherboard is also supported in the upcoming processors, which means that you can buy this motherboard now, use the PC now, and you know that you can upgrade your CPU in the time to come. Also, it has some very good features and very good chipset. So obviously the X570 is a better chipset, then comes 550, and then B450 is like the third one, but it offers quite a lot of good features in the motherboard. 4 RAM slots instead of 2. We have 4 PCIe slots. We have 6 SATA ports. We have 2 M.2 drives on the motherboard, and we have a built-in I/O shield. We have good ports on the motherboard, everything we want, and a lot of future upgrade. Can you see how much potential this motherboard had? And I'm hardly using any of this. By the way, one of the M.2 slots also has a heatsink that is also included in the motherboard, which is very, very good. Also, don't you think that looks really cool over there as well? Just doesn't look cheap. The PSU is a Cooler Master 500 watt power supply. Now, it is also an overkill for this because you don't need, you probably can get away with probably 350, 400 watt power supplies. I went with this one because you're not spending that much more between like 300 and 500 one. This was a good deal. I'm gonna leave the links all in the description, which means that even if you put a more powerful CPU in there, I can still use that power supply. Even if I add a graphics card, I can still use the power supply. So it's kind of, you know, recycling, very good recycling process going on over there. Now, the last thing that you're probably wondering, the one before the last thing, is the case. This case, I think, is probably one of the best in terms of what it looks like and what features it offers. This is a very good airflow case. This all in the front is kind of open, okay? So a lot of air comes in from the front and from the side. There is also 3 fans pre-installed from the factory. I left 2 in the front and 1 in the back. I think this is one of the best configuration. You can add another one on the bottom and then load on the top if you wanted to. They are 120 millimeter fans. This case also has a lot of upgrade abilities. You know, you have 2 SSD slots on the front. It looks very smart. I love when the bottom PSU is hidden. You've got, you know, the heat from the PSU is coming up as well and pushed out from there. You can put your graphics card even mounted vertically. You can put radiators in there. There's some more SSD slots in the back, hard drive slots hidden underneath there. It just looks slick. So now if you say, oh, I built a PC for £400, you wouldn't think your PC looks like that, would you? Because that just shows you like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. It's pretty good PC. The last thing is the OS drive inside. So the OS drive, I wanted to go with something that is an NVMe drive just to make the, you know, OS work snappy and things like that. So I went for something very, very cheap. It is only 128 gigabyte drive from Transcend, but that NVMe drive is just to like keep the cost very low. It's only like £29. It just keeps it snappy and it's installed underneath that heatsink over there. So as you can see, you can build quite a good PC for the price of Mac wheels, and this has a lot of future potential. So now let's jump into the computer and do some tests and show you around how does it handle some of the everyday tasks that you might have. And yeah, let's look into it. I know it's another day and get a haircut, so now I can even do videos without the hat, but we'll keep it on because it's kind of become a thing to do the videos with a hat. Benchmarks and things over here. I'm not recording the computer on OBS because I don't want the OBS running in the background and actually affecting the performance of the computer, because it's actually running on the CPU and graphics card now because it's all built in. So that's why I'm using this other camera over here that's just recording, you know, the screen over here, because that's in a real world scenario you wouldn't have OBS constantly running in the background. First of all, I'm gonna check out the Cinebench R20, and I just completed the test because test takes so long. So now you can see that this is the CPU got 1914 points, okay, and then the single core is 415 points. Now this is completely in stock. I haven't done any overclocking or anything like that. You could boost this a little bit with overclocking and things like that if you want to, but you know, for the sake of anyone who's buying this or building this, this is just completely stock, installing the drivers, and that's what you get out of the box, which is very, very good. Now you're thinking, wait a second, Lauri, this isn't very impressive. So now in here I've got the MacBook Pro over here, okay? Usually what people consider like the you know, creator's laptop and what you create things on, and you know, video editing and things like that. This is 13-inch 2019 base model, and there is an i5 quad core in there, which is a 4-core processor as well. Compared to the, you can see them on the screen, it is 1617 points, and the single core is 389 points. We're quite a bit better actually than the MacBook Pro on this pure like CPU performance. On the screen here you can also see the GPU performance and how does that compare to the MacBook Pro, because the MacBook Pro also has an integrated graphics on the actual processor, which is exactly the same deal as, you know, we have over here, graphics card integrated. It's an APU on both of these. So next up, let's move on to our DiskMark score over here, okay? So Crystal DiskMark, we can get the read speed of 1426, which is quite fast, you know, 1.4 gigabytes per second read, and write speed is more like SATA speed, which is 528 megabytes a second. Now, this is not what it's advertised, and I'm not sure if this is the only on my model of the SSD NVMe, because it should be like 1000 or something like that write speed as well. So if you can squeeze out an extra £20, I recommend you go with a Sabrent Rocket 256 gigabytes, so you get double the storage and you get pretty much double the speed, more than double the speed actually. It's a very awesome drive, which I'm actually used on other PC builds and on my main. If you haven't seen the black and red build, that was the main OS drive over there, and it's absolutely fantastic. Most of the time I'm using Sabrent drives when doing builds. I just love them. I think the performance value is very much in sync. Think about this, that this is still a little bit faster or as fast as a SATA SSD, and we only paid £29 for it. This is in the UK. Obviously in the US it's a little bit more expensive, but roughly the same ballpark. It might be even the same price. Even the disk write speeds are quite impressive over here. So next up we have Premiere Pro. Can you do any video editing on it? And I've got a few test clips over here, you know, like different formats, different resolutions, different video clips, so we can check out how does this PC, you know, handle different codecs and video editing. And as you can see, there's different clips. I have some GoPro clips. These are 4K clips. Then we have Sony XAVC 4K. It's very tough codec, this. Then we have Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K clips. Okay, so this is B-RAW 6K. And then we have some full HD H.264 from Sony as well. So these all four are H.264, two of these are 4K. So let's have a look, drag one of these onto here, and we have a timeline. Okay, so this is a 4K timeline now. So I'm gonna start with something that is the most impressive, okay? So this over here are the 6K clips, okay? These are all, let me show you, 6K, as you can see over here, 6144 times 3456 pixels, 24 frames per second, 6K. I'm gonna drag it on the timeline, keep existing settings. So I've roughly downscaled this 6K clip to 4K, and look at the timeline performance. It is unbelievable, okay? 6K, I'm just gonna press play. 0 frames dropped, 6K, okay? Now this shows how efficient the Blackmagic B-RAW codec is. It's a 6K codec and it plays it back full resolution on this random 4-core, okay? And let me even show you this. Let's have a look at the CPU usage. Did you see that? Right, I'm pressing play, it plays back a 6K clip over here, and it's using 100% of the CPU. So it is utilizing everything, but we're not dropping any frames over here. Let me just put another different clip over here where there's a bit more movement on here. So timeline performance on 6K is absolutely awesome. Let's put another one over here. Okay, so now we're dropping, are we dropping frames? Still not dropping any frames. See, 6K, playing back absolutely no problem. So obviously this is zoomed in a little bit more. If we go something like that, we have, see, 6K, absolutely ridiculous, okay? So let me say this one more time. The B-RAW codec is absolutely fantastic, and you don't need necessarily a very fast computer to edit, you know, videos. So I could easily, you know, let's say we're gonna cut over here, you know, let's trim this clip a little bit. Let me do something like this where I'm actually playing back two 6K clips on top of each other. Okay, I just want to see how does it handle over here. Okay, so let's press play. I'm just playing back two 6K clips on top of each other, and it plays back 0 frames dropped. So let's add something else now. So we know if you're editing 6K Blackmagic RAW or 4K Blackmagic RAW, any B-RAW, fantastic. This PC can do it, okay? So next up, let's put on Sony 4K XAVC, okay? So this is like quite a tough codec. And how do I know that? I know that even the 16-core Ryzen 3950X on my main PC sometimes just struggles with this codec, because this codec is just, it's a very bad codec, okay? So time-lapse scrubbing is quite, it's not as good, is it? Look, I have to stop and then I can see what it is. So now let's have a look. Okay, so it plays back half the scale over here. This is half the resolution of the playback. Plays back 4K, 0 frames dropped, no problem. Okay, so why I have this on half the scale is because you're most likely not gonna edit this on a massive screen to see it on full resolution. So there's no point of playing it back on full speed, full resolution. That's why I'm playing it back half resolution. And as you can see on the 4K, it sometimes, you know, is not as good. As you can see, we're dropping quite a lot of frames now. Depends what we're doing over here. 4K, this is not as good over here. As you can see, It is doable. This is some B-roll of like this PC, and as you can see, some of these clips, it depends on the clip as well. It's all filmed on 4K. This, as you can see, 4K, 25 frames per second. And when pressing play, it actually can play it back pretty nicely. 0 frames dropped, depends on how much is happening on the screen as well, you know, how much movement is on the actual clip. As you can see, the timeline performance isn't very good still. It's very choppy and like that. So another trick, if you have like a slower CPU or, you know, a machine, what you can do is proxy. We're going to create some proxies. H.264 low resolution proxy next to your original media in proxy folder, and we're going to press OK. Now it's going to open the Adobe Media Coder, and now we can see how fast does it actually render this clip over here as well. So this clip is about 15 seconds, I think. So how does the proxy work? So when I did a test before, and at the moment there's no internet, so it's not connecting it, and it says blah blah blah, I can't do it because there's no internet, which is a stupid thing about Adobe, you know. If you lose internet, you can't use your products, which is what, you know, ridiculous. I'm sorry about that rant. Before, when I did the proxy test, it roughly rendered a 4K, you know, proxy, 4K 25 frames per second into a low resolution proxy in double the amount of time that it has on 4K. So if it was 15-second clip, it did it in 30 seconds, which is quite impressive still. If you need to, let's say, edit on very fast and you want the timeline performance to be very fast, but you don't mind the actual waiting time of proxies, you can do that. I do have actually some proxies over here from the GoPro. So as you can see, these proxies over here are, yeah, it's not 720p actually, it is like 540p actually, so 30 frames per second over here. So let's have a look. If I put one of these proxies over here, as you can see, it just works absolutely flawlessly, you know. Let's scale it up. Let's put another proxy here, a long proxy. So this is like a long GoPro proxy. As you can see, it's quite snappy even on the editing program. As you can see, you know, I'm whizzing around different things over here and effects controls. It's very good performance. So as you can see, depends on your proxy. As you can see, if you did it on proxies, the timeline performance would be absolutely flawless. But if you have a 4K or Sony 4K clip, it's gonna be a bit, it is possible, but I don't see a point why you would need to edit this on full resolution. Just do your color grading later and then put the full resolution on there. Let's try some more clips over here. So I have a GoPro over here, and this is a GoPro's 4K clip as well. So let's drag this one on. 4K, 30 frames per second, H.264 as well. So let's just press play and let's see how this does. Okay, GoPro clip on 4K, 30 frames per second, 0 frames dropped. Let's have a look at the playback. As you can see, even GoPro footage, this timeline scrubbing through works better than Sony's. So Sony's just, the XAVC codec is just very tough to handle for any computer. It doesn't matter about the resolution, it's just big. As you can see, this is completely like workable timeline performance for me. One last thing is on the project, I have this over here. This is a Sony Full HD codec. Okay, so this is Full HD XAVC codec over here. Let's do a little bit of an up-res to 200, then it's fully covered over here. And let's see how does the playback time. And as you can see, if you do this on Full HD, it is very doable as well. Very nice playback over here. And if we're gonna press play, completely fine, 0 frames drop. So if you're doing any full HD editing on this PC, it is completely fine. I know that this is like not perfect performance, my friends. This is a £400 computer. It is £130 CPU and GPU put together. It is very, very impressive, okay? And rendering times, obviously, you don't need to expect like very fast rendering times, but the most important thing when you're getting this computer for me is the timeline performance. If you can't edit the video on your timeline, it's very choppy. There's no point of having a fast render times, but if you can edit it on your timeline, it is all right. So I'm gonna give it a thumbs up. I think I'm very impressed for the price point, what it can do, okay? So let me show you one more thing. Let's say if we're gonna do screen recording. Okay, so we're gonna put on here display capture. Okay, we've got only one screen over here. Let's go to settings, video, where are we? Let's capture this in full HD as well. 30 frames per second. Do you know what? let's put it to 60 because, you know, some people needed to record 60 frames per second. Okay, so our screen recording now, 60 frames per second, full HD. Let's record. As you can see, just looking on the GPU over here, it is doable. It's because OBS is mostly running on GPU and a little bit on CPU. As you can see, I'm here on about 17% of the CPU and 60% on the GPU. Okay, the GPU is running quite a lot, but it is doable if you're showing, you know, okay, let's go over here and we're gonna do a little bit of. As you can see, the timeline performance is not as good anymore because OBS is running in the background. Let's see if it can do that. Yeah, it can play back, but it wasn't as good as before. Okay, see, we're dropping frames now. Yeah, definitely timeline performance is not as good because OBS is running in the background. As you can see over here now, you can see in Task Manager, we were using everything here on the CPU, and GPU was quite utilized as well. If you need to do some kind of screen recording as well, it is able to do even that in the background. You know, you're gonna want your PC for, let's say, showing you what to do on Chrome or Premiere Pro or something like that, you know, how to do some online things or how to use programs or things, and you want screen recording, it can do that, no problem. And it is £400, guys. Just remember that price point. It is very important. It is so cheap. This computer is not as snappy if you went with a faster memory, but because it's only on one channel and it's still running on 2666 megahertz. Now, I'd like someone to comment in the comment section below if they know this better. I think how this works is because only one DIMM slot is occupied and it's a dual channel memory, it runs on half of the speed. I think that's what it is. So it's not the fastest, but if you get two of these sticks and put them in there, you get 32 gigabytes of RAM. It runs in 2666 megahertz, which is still faster than this MacBook Pro over here. Okay, this MacBook Pro that I have over here, 2019 base model, runs on 2133 megahertz. So just some comparisons. Okay, sometimes you don't need the faster things to do everyday tasks. So this is just to show you that for everyday tasks or for everyday usage of the computer, you don't necessarily need the fastest computer. You can get something that is very slick for £400 for the price of Mac wheels, and it can do a lot of good work for you, and you get quite a lot for your money. Now, don't forget that it's packing a lot of potential for future upgrades, whether you want to put more RAM in, you want to put a better CPU in, better GPU in, it's all optimized for that to give you a lot of future proofness. So there we go. Let me know in the comment section below if you would have made the same decision, or if you're a PC builder or PC enthusiast. I would love to know from you, what changes would you have made in the part list if you would have got a £400 Mac wheel Puget is a different company. Anyway, budget system. So let me know in the comment section below if you would have got the same system or a bit of a different configuration. I'd love to know from you and your opinion why you would have got that. As always, hit that like button. It actually makes a difference. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.